Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. And in the past month of July, I've been talking exclusively about Criterion's and some of Criterion new releases. So now I want to look at some other labels, their new releases. And so I'm going to start off with a Kino release. I think it was from May or June of 2023. This is a 1939 French film, There's No Tomorrow. And I almost missed this in the Blu-ray.com release calendar. That is indeed not Claudette Colbert, who I originally, in scurrying through the list, thought it was. It is instead Edwige Ferrier, and she is the star of a film directed by Max Ophuls. This is 1939, the second to the last film that Max Ophuls, one of my favorite directors of the classic era of cinema, made in France before he had to flee the Nazis and go to America, where he made, I think, 4 or 5 movies. So Ophuls movies, and this is a real surprise. I would never thought I'd ever be able to get a chance to see this film. But it's very much in line with Ophuls' later work, and which centers on a woman in love, and the trials and tribulations that she faces, the roles that she has to play to survive in life. So in the movie opens, we see Evelyn, the Edwige Ferrier character. She's working in a cabaret, and not just any kind of cabaret, as we learn as the barker announces outside the cabaret to the people on the street. This is a topless cabaret, and indeed there is. We see a line of dancers, and they are topless. So the French censors must have been much more lenient than American censors. It is a bit of a jolt for a 1939 film. And Evelyn is not in that particular that line of dancers, but she is. It's implied that she doesn't expose herself and to the audience, and indeed we do see a scene later to confirm that. But we see her backstage, and she is an unhappy woman, and is disconsolate, and she seems to be sick of the tawdriness of her current existence. We get a lot of rapid dissolves here. We see Evelyn as if she is trapped, and this is a very lively cabaret, and full of there's netting and gauze in front of the camera, and to intensify this feeling of a trap. And in Adrian Martin's commentary, he said that Ophuls was making a very deliberate tribute to Joseph von Sternberg and Marlene Dietrich films, especially Blonde Venus, because there's also a child. Evelyn is a single mother, which Marlene Dietrich also had a child in Blonde Venus. And she's playing a role. She has to play a role. And this is the trap that she's in. She plays a role as a dancer, exposing herself to men's desires, and then when the dancing is over, she has to act as a sympathetic listener to the lonely wealthy men that are in this bar. So, but her real job here is to get him to buy 7 bottles, and then she has fulfilled her obligation. But and Evelyn is the most popular dancer in at this cabaret. Everybody wants to spend some time with her, but she is. You can see her disgust at the man she's with, her self-disgust as well. Then there's a chance meeting, and Evelyn is confronted with the great love of her life from 10 years ago. And her love, Georges, has never married, and because he views that love affair he had with Evelyn as the premier moment of his life. He says to her, when a couple fall in love, it's like the world begins again. And he can never get over that, the quality, the purity, the innocence of that love when they were 10 years younger. And Evelyn also views that love that way, as something just that she holds dear to her heart, and she cannot let him know her current existence, and she views herself as a fallen woman. So she has to play another role in order to preserve this man's remembrance of what they had once experienced. So, this is very much ties into Ophuls' kind of lost innocence, the longing for the past, always part of the way the past it infects the future, or the present and the future. And Ophuls is very emphatic with Evelyn and with all his female characters, their plight, the trap they're caught in, the roles they have to play. The women can never be themselves. They have to always play a role for the sake of men, so that they can actually survive in this patriarchal world. And so it's very much a sense of time, of being caught up. The time catches up with you, with Evelyn. And Ophuls very much is influenced by the theater of the 1920s. He was a theatrical director of some note before he started making movies. And then this was the modernist era. This was the anti-realism era, a love of artifice. So Ophuls didn't mean for his films to be real. He saw them as kind of fairy tales. They often were romantically fatalistic, and they moved towards tragic conclusions, and mostly because of this separation between who a woman really is and the roles that she has to play. So Evelyn is very much a through line to Ophuls' great masterpieces that were yet to come. Lisa, the Joan Fontaine character, and Letter from an Unknown Woman, Madame Du for sure, and most of all to Lola Montez, whose whole life was involved in play acting. And Ophuls' great masterpieces, last film. All three of those, I made videos on all three of those films either last year or the year before. I'm going to create a playlist of Ophuls films, and there is some controversy because you can interpret Ophuls. He's a very, very rich filmmaker. You can interpret his films in many different ways. I'm interpreting it as the critique of the patriarchy, but as Adrian Martin points out, Tag Gallagher regards these women as ultimately embracing their tragic destiny, and almost like this is who I am. This tragic destiny. This is who I really am. And Martin's, in the pantheon of commentary providers for me. This is just a terrific commentary, and he goes through all the different themes of Ophuls, but he also goes through who some of these people are, because these actors. Now this is 1939, so Ophuls was started out as a German director. In fact, Kino last year put out Laughing Heirs, which is sort of an Ophuls comedy that he made in Germany right before he had to emigrate after the Reichstag fire. He emigrated to France and made several films in France, and so this is the first one of his French films I've ever seen. But so everybody is sort of on the run and on the move. There's lots of Jewish people in the cast and in the crew. You always wonder when you watch these films, what happened to these people? And they look fairly familiar. So there's Edwige Ferrier. Now I've never seen her before, I don't think. But she was in another Ophuls movie. Now, she was sort of compared to Martine Carreau, who played Lola Montes, who was not considered was considered a beauty, but not a great actress. And Ferrier was the same way. I think she gives a terrific performance as Evelyn. But George, the man, her lost love, he looked vaguely familiar. And he would appear he would survive the war and go on to, in the 60s and 70s, he appeared in Italian Giallos. But he was also in Horror Express, a movie I talked about last year, in October of last year. And he plays the Count in the movie with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, which is just a great, entertaining sort of horror comedy. And then there's Daniel Lacourse. Lacourse, my French is terrible. He made it to the French New Wave. So he was in several Chabrol movies. He was also in The Train with Burt Lancaster. Again, an actor that I did recognize. And then there's he's playing George's friend and sort of advisor and looking askance at who Evelyn might actually be and what she might be up to. But Evelyn has a very good friend as well, played by Paul Aziz, and he is sort of the voice of reason here. He's the MC at the cabaret, and he tries to get Evelyn to accept herself, who she really is. Our life, it's not that bad. This is where we've ended up in life. Let's make the best of it together. It is implied that he is very fond and in love with Evelyn, but Evelyn looks on him as sort of a brother. The power of her remembrance of her lost love sort of precludes the idea that she could ever fall in love again, or even accept a love that is not that powerful. And you could say that. And this is an interesting part, I think, of Max Ophuls' movies, is his depiction of love. What is romantic love of this kind of power? You can interpret that Ophuls' view is that it's an infection that comes upon us. It's a destructive force that comes upon us, compare it to Frank Borzegui's view, because Borzegui is another director who the world begins again. When a couple falls in love, the world begins again. But for Borzegui, that love can survive anything. It's just the whole center of life. For Ophuls, it's not so. Their destiny is the destiny of love in Ophuls films is always going to be compromised by situations, by social situations, social roles. So then we also have Adrian Martin also mentions the music here, which is by a composer named Alan Gray, and he was actually a Polish composer. Alan Gray was not his real name. And he'd studied under Schoenberg, E-tone music under Schoenberg, and then changed his name to write music for the movies, which was seen as kind of lowbrow work. But he actually, as the war developed, he moved to England, and he wrote musical scores for a few Powell and Pressburger movies. Including I Know Where I'm Going, Colonel Blimp, and Canterbury Tale. So there's some big time talent here. There's also Ernest Schaften did the photography. He would come to Hollywood and make a lot of movies and shoot a lot of movies in Hollywood. So there's big time talent here, and this is a big time movie. So this is not a minor work for Max Ophuls. This is a film, and the ending, and Adrian Martin compares the ending to Antonioni, especially La Clese. It's a devastating ending, and just highly recommended for anybody who loves classic movies, French movies, Max Ophuls movies for sure. This is a must. So next up will be another director of the classic era of cinema, and that is Carter or Dreyer. This is a 1925 movie, also recently released from Kino's. Thank you, Kino, for bringing these kind of movies out. So it's a silent film. I've only talked about one silent film before in my 2.5 years on YouTube. So this should be a lot of fun to talk about as well. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.